Well, discussing politics, it seems to be the order of the day any day in Alberta. New political initiatives are nothing new to us here in the province, and lately there's a regional resistance towards products like Alberta oil and gas and new pipelines to deliver the province's petrochemicals to markets in Canada and abroad. And we brought you conversations in the past months about different ideas on the future of the Alberta industry and even the province's plan or the province's place in the Canadian Confederation. But joining me today is Dr. Dennis Modry of the Alberta Prosperity Project. Dr. Modry, thanks so much for coming on once again today. And you're joining us from Edmonton, I believe, right?
Yes, I am. And thank you for having me.
Dr. Modry, we've had you on the show in the past regarding Alberta health and government policy on healthcare, but today we want to speak with you about another project that you're a part of, and that is the Alberta Prosperity Project. So first of all, please tell us more about what this project is all about. What's its goal?
Sure. Well, to begin with, the structure is that we formed the Alberta Prosperity Society, registered with Service Alberta, and it has a board of governors. And the purpose of the Alberta Society primarily is the governance of the Alberta Prosperity Project. The Alberta Prosperity Project is primarily an initiative to unite all Albertans, businesses, and organizations to protect Albertans and their own interests, self-determination, individual freedoms and rights, and prosperity by enabling Alberta to chart a new path forward. That new path forward is either independence within Canada, meaning that Alberta has far more control over its wealth and the programs that truly fall under provincial jurisdiction, but that has been usurped by federal government overreach. Or alternatively, if we're not able to fix Alberta's circumstances within Confederation, then Alberta becomes independent in another way as an independent, sovereign, constitutional republic. And so what the Alberta Prosperity Project is trying to accomplish is to educate Albertans, because that's what we are. We're an educational society, the purpose of which is to educate Albertans on the rationale and the merits of protecting their own interests, their individual freedoms and rights, and prosperity by the only means possible. And that is for the next government to have sufficient leverage, use the term leverage in business, to have an upper hand in negotiations. In politics, it's power or negotiating power. And Alberta has never had negotiating power in its entire 116 years of existence. But the prizes for Alberta independence, either within Canada or untethered to Canada, are numerous and spectacular. And this is something that a lot of Albertans still don't really understand or appreciate, and don't understand really how we can get there legally and efficiently and in a very timely fashion, i.e. within the next 3 to 5 years. That's how quickly it can happen.
So you're mentioning there's great benefits. Maybe explain what some of those benefits might be.
Well, for example, right now we are taxed federally in Alberta to the tune of about $60 billion a year, of which we get back only about 27 billion. And given the price of oil coming up, our tax base federally is going to go up even further. So one of the benefits, for example, is when you realize that we overfund the pension plan by $3 billion a year, by having control of our own wealth, pensioners are immediately benefited by a minimum of $3 billion a year. We then have the opportunity to do some very unique things, such as to gradually reduce over a period of a few years our taxation. So we could easily get to a flat tax of 10%, both personally and corporately. In addition to that, I like to ask the question of various audiences that we speak to, do you own your own property without a mortgage? And a certain number of people will hold their hand up. And then I say, well, just don't pay your property taxes and you'll find out who really owns your property. And the point that I'm getting at here is that Alberta is unique in terms of the wealth generation potential. And we would have an opportunity here also to gradually phase out property taxes, in which case, then for the very first time, Albertans owning property would actually own it and wouldn't be responsible for paying what really is a rent to the federal government or a tax to the federal government. So those are just some of the things, but the opportunity to improve healthcare, education, social services, resolving the problem of the homeless is at hand, and we know how to do it. We've drafted it. We've worked long and hard hours working with constitutional lawyers and very bright professionals to come up with what is a very cogent, very realizable, and understandable plan to get to nirvana, if you will, for Alberta.
Now, Dr. Modry, you've been working a lot through the years in public policy. So why was it important for you to champion this new political cause? What made you want to get involved? And what's your role?
Right, and very good question. But just to be crystal clear, we're not political. We are apolitical. We don't back any party. We're nonprofit and nonpartisan. That's very, very important to understand, because it doesn't matter the government that's in power, as long as they understand what is required in order to protect Alberta's interests, individual freedoms and rights, and prosperity, then any government can do it.
Okay.
All they've got to do is have the courage to do it.
So it's not about picking sides in politics at all.
No, it's not. It's not about picking sides at all. It's about understanding what you want in terms of your freedoms and rights and your prosperity going forward. If you like big government and high taxes and being controlled in everything that you do, well, that's one tiny group of the population. But if you want freedoms and individual freedoms and rights, and you want to be able to travel unfettered and these sorts of things, and you want to retain the majority of the wealth that you generate, well, then here is an opportunity for Alberta to really chart a new path forward. And like I say, within Canada or without Canada. And it's an opportunity as well, I might say, to actually save Canada in a way in which I believe the majority of the population would want. So why did I get involved? Well, I got involved now that I'm retired. As you know, I was a cardiac surgeon and transplant surgeon, and I got involved really simply because I guess you could look at it this way. For my entire career, I was able to help one person at a time through my surgical practice. Here is an opportunity to help millions of people to protect really what are the values and principles that we were brought up in terms of Western civilization. And we see those being eroded very substantively. And I just figured that, well, what am I going to do for the rest of my life? So I wanted to be involved with some very bright other individuals who were like-minded and who also want the best for Albertans in a way in which no Albertan is left behind and everybody's quality of life and standard of living is dramatically improved. And that we can prove that can happen by adopting what we are recommending for policy and governance and bylaws for the next government in power. Okay. Whatever happens in a year from now.
That's very interesting. So how would Alberta become untangled from the rest of Canada? That doesn't seem very easy.
Right. It actually is very, very easy. And it's so simple to understand because the Supreme Court actually defined it in the Clarity Act. So what really is required is, and this is a unifying concept, both for those people who want a better deal in Confederation for Alberta and those who want Alberta to get to become a new independent sovereign nation. So what the Clarity Act was all about was defining the parameters around a referendum on independence. Because a successful referendum on independence gives Alberta the moral and legal legitimacy to chart a new path forward. The three components of the Clarity Act that are relevant to understand are: number one, there has to be a clear question posed to the voters. Number two, there has to be a clear outcome. And number three, there has to be a period of negotiation. Now, with a successful referendum, then what happens, assuming that the question and the outcome are valid, then what happens is the Alberta government has, for the first time in 116 years, the opportunity to negotiate with Ottawa from a position of strength. And for example, by saying, well, we want out from under Bill C-69 and Bill C-48. We want, as the Constitution defines, complete unfettered control of the development and transport of our natural resources. We want to be able to, for example, implement better solutions for healthcare, because right now in Alberta, our healthcare system functions in the lowest quartile, and we fund it at the level of the highest quartile. So there are tremendous opportunities to improve healthcare, but you have to get out from under federal regulatory overreach, which is the Canada Health Act. So these kinds of things can happen through negotiations, in which case, if Albertans get what they want, which we have defined on our website, albertaprosperity.com, then very legitimately, Alberta could remain in Confederation, but with a far better deal. And this would impact the other provinces as well, because we believe that the majority of citizens in other provinces want the same thing that Albertans want, but they can't get it because of the federal structure that is currently in place. So there has to be very significant changes to the Constitution, and you'll never get those kinds of constitutional changes unless you have the negotiating power that's given to a government through a referendum on independence. There's really no other way to achieve that objective.
Okay, so what about that historical British Commonwealth? So how do we deal with the role of the Queen in all of this?
Well, that's very simple. I mean, if we remain within Canada, then we remain, as an independent nation within Canada, then we are still attached to the Commonwealth and the monarchy, and we would carry on as a parliamentary democracy. However, we have far better control of our affairs and far better control with respect to elected officials through recall if we are a sovereign constitutional republic. Now, there are 54 nations that are involved with the Commonwealth, and 34 of them are constitutional republics. So even as an independent sovereign constitutional republic, we would maintain our association with the Commonwealth, but we would not have a relation with the monarchy per se anymore, because we would be governed by the rule of law, not by the way in which we've been governed thus far.
Mm-hmm. And how long do you think all this could take to implement in Alberta if it were to go through?
Yeah, actually very quickly. So the next government, for example, can within 2 years take control of policing, pensions, immigration, employment insurance, and provincial tax collection. That's all legitimate within the Constitution. By taking control of provincial tax collection, you then have the opportunity to really set the stage for taking control of federal taxation. So at roughly the 2-year mark, you have your referendum on independence. But a referendum on independence could occur at any time. So for the next government, if the polling looked very positive, you could have that referendum at any point in time. But with a successful referendum on independence, then you negotiate with Ottawa and the other provinces for a period of 6 to 12 months. And if Alberta gets what it wants, you can be sure the other provinces will want the same sort of thing. And there will be a devolution of power from the federal government to the provinces, which is the way the Constitution was originally intended. And if Alberta does not get what it wants within through those negotiations, then within that 6 to 12-month period, Alberta can declare that it is an independent, sovereign, constitutional republic because it now has that mandate from the people. And that gives Alberta international legitimacy. So it's really that simple. It's not a complicated process, although people who might oppose this would say that it's impossible or it's too difficult and that sort of thing, but it really isn't. It's really very, very simple. In this way, you also get out from under, what's coming down the line with the Great Reset. For people who are not inclined towards wokeness, cancel culture, critical race theory, this is an opportunity to, again, chart a new path forward away from that overarching, world control of everybody's movements and what they buy and where they go and that sort of thing. So
Dr. Modry, we're about out of time, but really quick, how can people find out more about the Alberta Prosperity Project?
I would recommend go to the website, the albertaprosperity.com. We have events occurring on a regular basis, oftentimes 2 or 3 on a weekend. You could come to an event or read the material on the website, and you can sign up, become a member or a volunteer or a chapter leader at that time.
Okay, fantastic. Dr. Modry, that's about all the time we have for today, but thanks so much for joining us once again here.
Thanks, Jeanette.
Absolutely. That was Dr. Dennis Modry of the Alberta Prosperity Project joining us from Edmonton.